What's required is the one staff ambulance in Atchison, one staff ambulance in Effingham, and one staff fly car at either place, or any place within the county.
What about like peak hours during the day?
The standard is 24/7, 365, so there's no variation. Call it under the contract.
Did I miss it, or is the extension option in here, and I miss it?
It's in rights and duties, paragraphs 1 and 2.
Oh, okay. I was looking back under the contract, so that I skipped over that. Doesn't necessarily pertain to this, but how important is it to change, knowing that we're probably going to be upgrading some of those ambulances, and how many of them you think we really need to change the decals and stuff on? I mean, if we're going to get a new one, we probably call it asset kind of, what our plan is do we need to spend much money to get the ones that's probably going to be recycled in 2 or 3 years.
The ones that are going to be kept, though, for now. As far as the graphics, if the plan is to get a couple new ones, and that'll address 2 of those ambulances very quickly.
And the flight car is going to be.
And then on the other 2, if as far as graphics to comply with the Board of EMS, we can handle that. We can take care of getting those up to snuff as far as graphics go. Naming.
I didn't know how important.
Well, you have to comply. There are some stipulations that you have to comply with the Kansas State Board of EMS on that. So that's what we have to make sure of.
It is. Well, the one vehicle that isn't going to be transferred is not included.
Okay.
I would suggest approval of 3 originals, so that we have, the clerk has an original and an original, text has 1 original in it.
We have a motion to approve ambulance service agreement.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the ambulance agreement, and we want 3 original copies approved, according to the specs of the agreed contract, the 3-year contract with a 2-year option. And between Tex Incorporated and Texas. I'll second it.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Nay. Carried 2-1. You want to sign our copies? or-
Well, just one of those, I've got 2 here.
I don't think I'm working on it. I think that we just needed 1, I think.
If you sign this, I'll just be your copy.
Then we got a list of additional equipment, stuff that we need to get purchased. I know the laptops or tablets, I saw that on there, make sure we get that.
Yeah, if you guys get with, Vicky and Chad, and stuff, because, with Wes, because we're gonna try to plug into the budget enough, in case, we don't want any surprises. We're probably gonna have to republish it and go back, but if we can get some more exact figures in the next 30 days or so as to what we really need to get, maybe not necessarily 100% stuff, but I mean, to make it pretty functional, so whether the laptops, because I know we're still kind of negotiating on the facility, and we should have some figures on, hopefully, on the Effingham facility, so.
And we'll let you know about radios too.
Yep.
Because, narrowbanding compliance is an issue and.
We kind of have an idea what our ambulance is, I'm not sure what it's gonna cost to convert to fly car, so we're gonna kind of need that. So,
Kind of what you're saying.
appreciate you guys' patience. I just, in 2 years from now, I wanna be one of these guys that writes a recommendation, okay?
Well, that's what the rest of our commissioners have done, so we are very excited and we look forward to serving you guys and we look forward to a good relationship and the ability to work together so that we can take the best care of the patients, so.
Thanks for giving us the opportunity to meet over and over and.
Well, I hope you understand that this is new to us.
Yeah. No, we were glad that,
And
glad to
we
help
wanna make
help
sure
each
that-
other along the way in this process and it was really enjoyable to get through this, so.
Appreciate your efforts.
Oh, yeah, you do, yeah.
Chad's gonna be easy, I think, for you to work with, and so we're looking forward to a good transition, so.
And all the other people that have been helping out with the process too. I know Wes has done some stuff, and JD, and some of the staff.
It's been a real team effort on everybody's part. Yeah.
That's what it's gonna take, though, it's gonna take.
Yeah,
We're gonna hit the ground running, that's what it's gonna take, that's what we're gonna take into consideration. We're gonna need that. Appreciate it, guys.
We'll get up to here.
Do you have an idea?
Thanks for watching.
Yeah.
Alright, well, I'm out of here.
We've already got bids going, trucks, equipment.
Thank you, John.
Thank
you.
We'll see you in the future, every day.
Give us all the time.
Thank you. Have a safe trip.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And all of you should be.
Yeah, we try to use that, get a little bit of Gene Kelly, Order Superior, we need to get that information.
Yeah, I saw your email yesterday, I didn't, I've not received a response from her.
Kate will be willing if we can get 500, but she indicated that she sent us that information.
Yeah, I think she probably did send it.
Okay.
I'll follow up with her today.
Mr. Leonard.
I just had several of the contractors requesting when our bid date was, so we missed that one. And then I emailed the paperwork that we gave each contractor, I emailed it to you now, you should have it. So I can put the paper.
Did they give you an idea of what, roughly what kind of time frame they thought it would take, I mean, that should make it.
They all just want a date, 2 weeks should be sufficient, I mean, they should be
So
able.
we need to expedite that, you want to set that for the 19th.
September.
September 19th, that's what I will tell them. And we need it the morning of by 10 a.m.
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
That'll work, that's all I got. Did you guys have anything?
Did you take the burn out?
The burn ban is not off, I called the fire department and, yes, we are wet enough on this side of the county, so it's not a big deal, but on the western side of the county, they got less than half an inch, and so.
Yeah, the East last night.
Did you, by the way, Dakota? Effingham only got, and we, my rain gauge on the building, only got half an inch, and so did the fire chief. So he requested not to take it off yet. And I told the fire chief that, and they agreed that if he felt that way, leave it on. So no, we did not take it off.
Okay, just let her go.
Well,
Yeah.
you know, stop thinking about it, I mean, there are a lot of dry corn stalks there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry till we get some of that harvested and stuff.
Exactly. Exactly.
We'll second guess you on that, okay?
Thanks.
That was throughout the whole weekend, though, that was,
Throughout the week. Yep.
okay.
Yep.
I don't know, 5 inches, but.
Yeah.
I think
you-
Wednesday, the winds are really supposed to pick up.
The winds are, and it's gonna be warm this week, so it's gonna dry everything out quite a bit. Next week is supposed to be in the 80s though, so that'll be like a cold front.
It's supposed to be 70s by the week.
I know, I'm looking forward to it.
I'm not.
You know,
No, we gotta have, at the state fair, you gotta have 80-degree weather to sell ice cream. Can't please everybody, can you?
no, the people walking around will appreciate it not being
Yeah,
sunny,
yeah.
so. You'll have better attendance, more people buying ice cream that way.
Well, if the sun's shining at 75, of course, it'll be 3 to 5 degrees warmer down there.
Yeah. Yeah.
If it's close to 80 with the sun shining, the wind's not blowing, they'll come, yeah, there'll be a lot more people show up.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not too worried, just with 70 degrees, one year we had 10 days of rain, it was under 80 degrees. We actually had people coming through the ice cream stand and put sweatshirts on.
Nice. I'm not sure if ice cream is cold.
It don't taste quite, it tastes pretty, but it's just not quite as enjoyable.
Yeah.
got for us today?
Just, info me on that.
So that's that. That actually, that type of stuff can't come out of that.
So, there's money there, but if we get audited,
Why, doesn't, 911 just,
It's not an enhancement.
I told Pat to look it up, make sure that.
I haven't looked it up yet, he just mentioned it to me this morning,
okay.
whether it can come out of the fund.
If we look it up, I don't have a problem running that interpretation. Our concern is if we get audited, still.
Now we've got funds with 3 different rules, you know that, right?
you're saying is if you proceeded in there and found out, sure, you know, say there's 20% and they're all close together, you could just, that's the surest way to get it to fly.
Yeah.
But if you completely opened up, then you're probably gonna have some protests.
Well, I don't know whether you would or not. As a landowner, I can't imagine not wanting to have fire protection.
Yeah. But I mean, you never know, I mean, some people, well, I've done all of that, you know.
Sure,
Some people don't forward think,
sure,
you think about the past.
sure. And,
So,
as
we
I
have-
understand, the only part of the county that is not covered at all is, down in the
West,
southeast
southeast of it.
corner. And the rest aren't technically within a fire district, but they contract areas out, I use contract with someone else to provide the service. So you're paying the tax and your township taxes instead of your fire district. But the area like where Commissioner Wagner lives is apparently not covered by anything. And we did have a fairly significant brush fire there recently, and the surrounding fire departments responded through mutual aid. I don't know that aid is really mutual. It's fairly one-sided.
District number 3, they only have 2 fire trucks and they're old and they can't fight everything. And that's the way, if they had a fire in the district that is covered, they gotta have help, a fire bill. Of course, the other townships do too, but, this, our district usually always responds, but, you know, they say, move your trucks back to the That's kind of a sad situation there. So what they need more tax revenue to update their equipment. So, I will, present this to, District number 3's board. We have a meeting on the 7th of this month. And this thing's a little low, I'm scheduled to go to, Caterpillar plant in Little Rock, Arkansas, on that, at that time. So I asked Wes if he would be able to go there and, explain the situation.
Do you know when that is? What day?
The 7th of September.
It's
Or
Friday.
is it 11th?
I think it's your, isn't it left through the 14th, Tom?
Well, it must be the 11th. It's on Monday night.
The 10th is Monday.
Or 10th is Monday. I'll have to
Do you want me to
look at my notes at home.
Do you want me to go?
If you would appreciate it if you could.
Yeah, where is it?
At the, District number 3 firehouse, it's on the old 73 highway, it's about 4 miles south on Sherman Road. Be on the little fire district building on the right side of the road as you're going south.
What time do you need?
That I haven't found out for sure. I'll let you know before. Okay, I move we approve the minutes of Wednesday, August 29th, as corrected.
Second that.
All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye. Good morning. Oh, Pauline, did you get a contract from Skyview or anything that they send you? They was supposed to fax and send a contract for that more with the agreement that no interest, the one we intend to purchase from the county, like, that we would, payment would not,
Okay.
I'll recall today and make sure that they got it sent, cause I didn't get to talk to the main guy, but the second guy, so I said he'd see that he got it, but, and they got it. Awesome. Pat, if you're writing up that contract, we wanna make, for those facilities at Effingham, two things, you just gotta make sure that the work has to be completed before December 31st, and the payment will come after the first of the year. Make sure that they're understanding of those terms. Who is acting on this? Did you get that one?
Yeah, we can discuss.
Oh, that's the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Not green tea,
It was about 2 inches last night, and then Saturday it was like about 3 inches.
You may have to mow your yard.
The grass is up there pretty high now, and it's green.
Weeds can't grow too much more yet because they already kept growing. That piece of new will sprout.
I only had 7 cents last night.
Oh, really? We had 2 inches. We had 2 inches. Must have just taken the strip.
I think there's a bird that sits on yours and blocks the gate.
Well, I got a new gate.
Oh, okay.
They might be
I
set.
mean,
I know that wind sure did blow, lots of lightning.
and I had health, Multnomah County Health meeting last night, it started thunder, and got put meetings over it. I said, I'll get out for it, it won't rain. I said, Broward County is rain, it rained on me the whole way home, I had got pulled off the road a couple times.
Yeah, we had a request from Mount Vernon Cemetery, potential funding.
Okay, do they not have a,
No, no taxing district.
Pat, can I ask you a question? Who is going to be called now? To talk on municipal court now? Just
Vernon, 5515.
I think you got 367, 5515. You're welcome.
There's some statutes, obviously, if stuff fails, which will not be good to see. Statutorily.
We need to do some changes here, some stuff on the budget, or, we'll see ready for that soon.
Yeah. John? Get us up to speed on where you're at.
You asked me to look into 2% COLA. And what it netted us is about $500,000 in salary expenditures. $500,000. To look over to see what
Run a scenario on 2% versus the
3%.
Oh, okay, okay.
Just to see.
Okay.
Just to see, and so that dropped the mill rate from 3.9 to 3.4 and change. When you drop the salaries, you're also looking at a guesstimation of an additional $26,000 in employee benefits but that's a sixth of a mil. That's negligible. So the 2% gets us closer, but it really didn't do as much as we thought it would do as far as our county expenditures. So you'll also notice that the ambulance service is in there at $650,000.
That needs to be said, because we don't have the additional costs, the operating costs that we're gonna be charged with.
Right. So
We've got to add that in there. That was one of the modifications that I thought we need, and then I think we all have to kind of decide how much of the sales tax. I mean, I think you plugged in 300,000. I earlier thought was gonna need to do just a little bit more than that in order to, because basically you kept the mill levy about the same.
right.
Right.
What about the consolidation on some of the funds, though, as far as the revenue side?
You need to move the stuff into general.
That I haven't gotten back to Trey on. I haven't gotten back to Melanie on, all the people that I was supposed to. Melanie hadn't emailed me back at this point as far as what it would cost to have her come up and consult for an hour or two.
Okay.
That's kind of what I'm looking at, because it's not very complex. It's just standard far as the goal of trying to keep the mill levy as close to the 2012, the program said that we would need to cut out $470,000 and change to keep the mill rate that they are currently instead of the increase.
Yeah,
So,
but you don't, I mean, we got some other numbers that we don't, I mean, when I go through it, there's a few things I don't think that we have actually plugged in there. I mean, like, if we had to plug in $175,000 in for the, operating of the ambulance for the first year, plus the fact we don't have did we figure a debt for capital outlay on the mill levy? And where did the Memorial Hall, did that go into? I didn't find that.
Memorial Hall is,
Where will it be under?
it's worth down under fund.
Yeah, but that's just the general contractual plus, I mean, that's with, you know, we have that grant that we have to fix the windows.
Mm.
And earlier, I think Jeff, you said about, you know, we run it through, well, we need to keep it special fund because of the grant, but that's gotta show up somewhere in the fund, and I haven't found that. Because we actually added 25,000 temporarily on the Memorial Hall event that group wanted to proceed with the landscaping and improvements to the front, but they were gonna have to match it, but we may not, that may be something that we may have to nix for this year and wait till next, but that's open for discussion. Like that 25,000 is not gonna go
Right.
along.
But the additional $150,000 for the ambulance will raise the mill, without consolidating,
right.
without doing the other things.
But we have sales tax money that we can, you know, I think that's what we have to discuss, is that we're gonna use the sales tax money. I'm for leaving the mill levy the same. I mean, to be very honest, that mill levy has funded its way, you know, although we got a heck of a deal.
Mm-hmm.
It's funded the whole thing, so I mean, anybody paying property tax has been paying for the ambulance service. Now we have an opportunity to use some of the sales tax money to supplement and get into even a better system. And, but even if we do borrow money to get the improvements that we need, there's gonna be a little bit of a mill levy on the indebtedness. So, and that's not in here either. And that is gonna be a must, and I know, like Jeff said, well, we can use the downfall, you can't already use sales tax money because that one comes in once a month. And we're gonna we about have to take a loan the first year.
Right.
Because we have to pay, now that doesn't mean that in subsequent years, say for example, that something's better resolved and we get more sales tax money, we could take that money and pay it off, you know, but the first year, if we don't have all that money right up front after January, I mean, because we have a fly car to pay for, we have an ambulance to pay for, and we'll have a facility at Effingham, so we have to have money right up front.
Right.
And there's no way that we'll have enough sales tax money
Right.
to do that. So, I think we have to, and I'm not opposed to using sales tax money to pay off the capital, but we can't do it the first year, the way I see it.
Mm-hmm.
So
you did want to increase what it says, the line for ambulance, and then it will be
move
that
sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
I think my original thinking, I had it broke down here. My only concern at this point, I mean, we have the flexibility with the solid waste fee now to help make up, you know, some of that difference, good, bad, or indifferent, as anybody wants to call it. So with that, we definitely have to have 450,000, and I'm basing this on past history. Now, I don't have no idea how many least 35% of that. If you use 40% for the ambulance, that's a little over 500,000. And then that leaves 25% of the money, which is 320,000 for solid waste, so you still got 525,000 to make up in solid waste fees. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's projected if you, that's the tricky thing about the sales tax. We're hoping it stays down. We did have some concern on the joint communications, I mean, where they're at right now, but,
Well, we will have to probably take out some sort of debt initially on the ambulance stuff.
so first, and I'm not.
Well, I think within that first year, because then that's just the cash flow, because we aren't paying $650,000 out, like, all at once.
Right.
So we could, those tax flows rolling in, but we need to get that stuff consolidated. That would give us probably a more accurate picture as far as.
Well, and we don't know, I mean, I'd rather have the operating costs a hair high, like I said, because if we end up with a little bit of surplus money coming in, we can use that money for capital, I mean, to upgrade a heart monitor, or else move it into, we could use it to help pay off the, the debt on the equipment, but sure, by year 3, we're gonna have to get another ambulance, so I mean, it's one of the things, but once we get this thing flowing, I really think, I mean, we shouldn't have to really even have a capital outlay fund for the ambulance service. We should be able to budget. We're gonna know each year what the service is gonna be. One thing we have to budget for is the operating cost. We have a little capital outlay fund. So I think some of these other companies I've been to, they try to budget $50,000 a year. That allows you about every 2 years to get a new ambulance. So, I mean, I just feel that may not even be real, it may take a little more than that, but, hopefully, then, like I said, we just get away from our indebtedness and have that in the each year operating fund. The indebtedness is good in the standpoint of seeing where we're at in the middle of that levy right now. It'll lower, I mean, it'll keep us from, we try to just fund all of the property taxes, it'll be pretty stunning. But if you spread out over 5 years, you kind of, with the option knowing that you can, in a good year, you can pay it off. I mean, it's kind of like some of the business, I mean, you may need a little money to jumpstart something, but if you have a good year, you can pay it off faster, so. That's just, I mean, that's my 2 cents worth. I mean, these other gentlemen, I want their input too, because actually 35%, I think Pauline said, did you say right now we're joint communications is actually 40%. And we may have to use 40%. Last year we were short of money when the first payment came and we had to transfer some money, so.
What really inflated is the 600,000 difference in road and bridge. You cut that in half, we're fine, we raised the mill, but I do understand that's probably
Well, and I think
not a
It's
possible
possible,
number.
I mean, I did think about that over the weekend,
What's that?
about the road.
Yeah, I think we got that. I mean, I think we all agree there's some neat things, it's a matter of how fast or how,
Right.
I've got a list of cuts here. But, I can come up with 300 pretty quick. But, that's just my opinion. But the road and bridge, still, if you give them 24, I mean, you took 150 off of that, they're gonna be in pretty good shape. I think the way I had that figured is, if you took 150 off, they still can do everything they want, except I think that they only be able to do 35 miles instead of 40 miles. Chip and seal.
Okay.
Now I have to go back figures for sure on that, but, you know, that's $150 right there. And that still gives them a pretty good bump to do its capital improvements. And here again,
Take it off capital outlay, or what were you reducing that?
probably off contractual, a little bit off contractual, and a little bit off capital outlay. Really, all he needs for capital outlay is to buy that dump truck, because we're gonna put the grader off. And we have to remember, I mean, about $180,000 of that is a one-time project. It's the River Road.
Yeah. That won't be beyond.
You know, so I mean, I think in that aspect, I can, you know, I sure.
People see that stuff.
Yeah, well, and I can, that's a one-time
You
deal.
can see it.
So that way, next year you have that to play with, plus the Memorial Hall is the same thing. That's a one-time, I mean, there's $300,000 right there of projects that we about have to do because of grant and or FEMA money. And, you know, that to me is a little easier to swallow in terms of it, because it's a one-time deal. And you know, we could fund the Memorial Hall with an indebtedness too, to help if it really comes down push to shove, to spread it out a little bit more. But I hate to get too many indebtedness too. There's, you know, it's, what we're seeing that may happen in the legislature. I mean, it may be best to get a few of these things done. We may not have near the opportunities in some years to come. That's not a sole reason for getting wild and spending, don't get me wrong, but,
How did, there were a couple of departments with step increases, how did I wonder how the 2%, factored in with those?
The jail and the, sheriffs, they had, I remember. The sheriff's office had one step increase that was 2.5% plus 2%, so.
I don't think that's crazy.
And you had 4 step increases in the jail. So, that was just take the current salary, add in figure in the additional 2.5%, and then take that, and then figure in the additional 2%. And it makes a slight difference rather than doing 4.5%. Because that's just lumping it all together when you could, but.
Can you run that scenario on that with just the 2%, without the step increases?
Huh.
Be curious to see what that would look like.
The only thing I would say about that is some of these are like 3-year, I mean, step increases are 3 years with the department, 5 years with the department. So, are those the same as an increase? I mean,
What's the total amount requested for personnel salaries?
900-some thousand on law enforcement.
Yeah.
It was
900-some thousand.
913,000.
What was it last year?
847.
It's a pretty good increase.
But with the.
But you got the new officer in there.
The new officer only adds an additional 26,000. So, with the 2% increase, then you're looking at 902,000. So, you eliminating about 10,000, 50,000, which, considering the size of the overall budget or overall department budget, that's not a whole lot, but it does do something.
So it reduced it down to 902.
It would reduce it to 902, and that's with including the 4.5% for the step increases.
Now, are you talking about with the 3%? Are you hearing that from the 2%?
The 902 is what he said he came up, that's the 2%.
That's the 2%.
Yeah.
And then the
26,000, is that what we?
You'd have to take 26,000 off that 902, and that would give you a reflection of what the increase in salaries for your budget would be.
if we took the 26,000.
4.3%.
4.3%.
Why would that be that?
The step increases.
Yeah, but how many step increases?
5.
5.
So
Is there factoring in overtime? Is it factoring in
they
overtime?
are factoring in overtime, which actually I did not do. The 4%, okay,
That affect overtime too.
and I did a little bit, because it is an increase, it did increase the time and a half. The 4% time and a half that they figure into their budget, so.
What's the count on the improvements?
That's our general, that's all of our capital improvement funds.
Oh.
That's just all that way. Yeah. Those are not budgeted. Yeah.
That's that, page, I remember now what you're talking about now. Now you're trying to find a well to dip some water out of.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a,
It's all general capital improvement.
he needs to get this sheet and work from it, because this is our evaluation of this.
Yeah, we had a lot of discussion about that. That's,
This is, you have to take the rebate from.
yeah, and we factored in the, talking about the assessed valuation
Mhm.
values.
Okay.
Did you talk with Jim?
Not yet. I haven't had a chance to talk.
Yeah, 'cause I think that's where there's a little dispute there too. The assessed value is, we don't have in this figure sheet that you're working on, the abatements aren't offered there, aren't offered there yet, which is to make some other big change. I'm gonna use veterans. Why, I noticed on our budget, 2011 budget, you had 14 million. In this year's budget, that's about what we temporarily come up with. And why is there such a discrepancy? I know that our valuations are higher. Pardon?
Land value went up.
Right. But what I'm saying is valuation went up, but yet,
Abatement went down. And then,
but what I'm saying is the mill levy,
Shouldn't increase that.
well, this
You
is
got $2 million,
see, that's,
you got $2 million of increase.
from 12, but from 11, when you go back and it was 14.
yeah, this is where we had questions on the assessed valuation being inputted prior. This is the questions that we had, that we couldn't figure out.
Oh, what they used.
Yeah, cause there's a calculation in the, I was just trying to look that up and see,
Well, I'm wondering if they use the total assessed valuation, but then there needs to be a fund in there for abatement, paying that, in other words. Well, here's the page, okay, here.
The very last page.
The very last page, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, we have to ask Jim about that, because.
here we are at 14.2. We're actually a little bit lower than that, and yet we've got a higher mill. We're, what's that, 8 mills high? Well, that's 46, so, doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Because this is outside, I mean, this doesn't really have a major effect on the mill levy. And it shows that they cut over $1 million last year, and now it's still went up. You got that carried down, Mary?
No, but I used the rebate, I took the rebates
Yeah,
out on the
right,
figures.
yeah.
That,
Well, and that's what
that's
I-
how I came up with those
Yeah,
calculations.
well, no, I mean, it blows my mind a little bit how you would think that more valuation, even if we use the other figure, we're still 5 million ahead, that shouldn't take, unless some other revenue sources, apparently our other revenue sources aren't as high as they were back in 2011. In other words, like, of course, I don't think there's that much difference in sales tax, but maybe there's not very much motor vehicle tax coming in. I don't know, so.
Yeah, that's the number that,
Yeah.
because when you trace it back, it goes into input year, prior year.
I guess just to be safe, I would plug in another 100, just make it 825, just to be safe, because I'd rather, we can come back, once those guys come in with some of these other estimates, we can always back that off if republished. But that extra, I'd leave your other numbers the same, but figure out using another 175,000 sales tax money. Okay, you understand, in other words, you would raise that 300 to 475. I can't remember what page that's on, but.
You're gonna run it consolidated, correct? Okay. You gotta think about the easiest way to look at that.
Well, then, it could make some difference, I think.
That's why I think it's gonna make a large difference. So where else can we trim?
So, yeah. Did you find your ambulance page, or do you have this here?
Are you, counting the budget?
Well, we're just discussing, he's running 2% on the salaries. Let me just have a, at 2%, it would drop down salaries to 902,000. And then we were just discussing as far as this, he had some step increases, how that impacted that. The rest of it,
Well, the only other thing that I would even consider is that we would postpone the disposition for the year. If push comes to shove,
cruises and stuff like that, you need to talk to him first.
Oh, yes,
Before we,
yes.
before this comes out in the paper.
Right.
He's an elected official and he knows what it needs to run his department. And he's had, lost a lot of people because they go somewhere and make $1 an hour more somewhere else. And
I don't know if that's strictly
training.
monetary, I don't know if that's strictly monetary that people are leaving, but that's not.
No, but I agree, Tom, I think before we make anything, there's no discussion now, before we make anything permanent, because we need to talk to, we can make recommendations and go or negotiate or whatever, but, yeah.
He can talk about it in open meeting. It's gonna cause him to keep the best.
We've got 3 mil increase, where are we gonna trim? I mean, outside the ambulance side.
I know.
A 2% COLA. I mean,
That's good, but you go talking about doing this in open meeting, you're gonna have problems. Without having him here in front of everybody and tell him what you're thinking about doing.
Well, how do you propose we discuss? We don't have a county manager or county administrator, so this is your only other venue to
Yeah, I know.
discuss.
But it's good if we're gonna talk about his budget, have him stay here and be here in the meeting when we're discussing it.
And it's the same way with Matt, we need to bring him in, I think there's potential that we need to bring him in and tell him.
Well, Matt is not a elected official.
Right. But I still think, out of respect, we need to bring him in.
That's true.
And,
That's true.
At least so they don't find out.
Tell them you're-
Instead of, because we've had that.
That's always done in the past.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the best way to find out that your budget's being cut. So.
And I don't think there's anything definite, because, I just assume, we're gonna probably, because we don't have the figures from Hayes, it's better off protecting ourselves a little bit, and then going back and tweaking things. The main thing I see is there's a few things in here that we need to make sure it's in the budget correctly.
Right.
That we talked about, whether we agree, and then we can go back and lower if we need to talk to certain departments.
And the one thing that, just reiterated is that we still haven't consolidated. This is just this is a simulation, this is an iteration seeing what a 1% decrease in COLA would do, or to see what's really affecting the mill rate. So this is, if we could take it back, put it back to the original 3% and then consolidate it, we might find something entirely different. So what we're doing is running through simulations to see how we can get to a number that's palatable, and consolidating gives you a lot of, it covers a lot of the cracks between the expenditures in departments. So until we do that, it could be the case where by consolidating all the funds and having it all draw from the same pool, we end up calculating that we need less in having more taxes, less than that, and that will affect the mill rate, and that will, obviously, it will take a master's degree in accounting to try and do the audit, because that would be a little bit more complicated, but it's better for our ends, and we still haven't done that yet. So all we're doing is testing, going through and seeing what's the causal relationship between the mill rates increase that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. So I will add that little caveat in that we haven't done the big step yet, which is what we've been discussing, consolidating into the general fund. extrapolate all that out, readjust it, and then put it back in.
Well, I don't think the ambulance thing's gonna affect us as much as some of these other things that we've got to play with. I mean,
Mhm.
because like I said, we've got sales tax money to divert there, for the time being, to cover even the operating, but we wanna make sure that it's in there that we have a, budget for a,
Right.
capital outlay.
Mhm.
And I don't know exactly where that's at, but, I earlier was figuring it's gonna cost, it could cost close to $200,000, but if you put that on a 5-year loan, that's only $40,000, so that's maybe a third of a mil or something like that.
Well, the main thing about the ambulance is whatever's showing up in the line. If it shows 650, that's gonna affect it. If it shows more, if it shows less. And to my understanding, that's what our main concern is, keeping that rate. Well, we can figure out how to get the first year program with debt financing, and we can do transfers from other funds, but,
Well, as of right now, I think the way it shows, like, almost the same mill levy on ambulance is gonna generate 300 some thousand. And if we, so, I can't remember what page.
Yeah, because it was split between two different, it's basically just taking what we dedicated to the Ashton Hospital
Right.
EMS, and that's just using that line.
It
That's the
actually,
budget.
this last one I just seen, it actually was showing, it was at 2.5, this is 2.6, and generates 310, but that's not, but in addition to that 310,000, there are, other tax, motor vehicle tax and stuff, so we can generate a lot more than that, so. Because it looks to me like there's about $40,000 of motor vehicle taxes. So that puts you up to 350,000. I think you got 340 in there.
Shut the games out. Yeah, have a good time. I have, Karen Friedman, if I have to take care of 2 other board hearings this afternoon, so if you don't need anything.
We know your telephone number.
Yeah, just let us know what's going on with Judy Kelly, yeah, we need to get that information. That's gonna be holding us up, possibly, because we need to get that, I think we want to get this stuff out by 1st September.
Sure.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
I think we do need to look at, noxious, only Wes in here on this noxious weed, because there's some figures here that didn't add up to me. It's not gonna make a major difference to me. But some of the figures he was basing it off of weren't actual budget figures from last year.
I think you had to adjust something, I think, didn't you? What did you have to adjust on the noxious weeds?
We did salary adjustment.
And I just, here again, I don't want, without Les here maybe explaining, because I may be reading it wrong, but I mean, it's, where did you come up now? What, I found it now. I'm showing, it's showing 161.5.
General expenditures.
Right. And that's what he presented. And what, when I went through, of course, there's some other, a couple of things that possibly could be changed, but the salary thing is what me didn't add up. Because it didn't add, I mean, it comes up, here again, it's not a big deal, and I could, it's showing a 9% increase, but part of that's due because he hired Connie in at a higher rate than, as administrative assistant than what he had got the year before, so when you look at last year's salary, it was, it was somewhat less. But I come up with, when you add those three together, I come up with 30, instead of 33, I come up with 32,000. Now here it's only 1,000, but I mean it's.
Well, that compared to the capital outlay at 7,000, which is equipment expenditures, and that's on par with last year's.
Yeah.
And then an additional 2,000, so it's.
Yeah, but I'm talking about personal services.
Yeah.
Do you have the back page? Did you add those together?
Yes.
What did you come up with?
For which year?
What is proposed, this is the proposed, the way I see it, it's proposed, it says 2012 proposed budget, but it should be the 13th, because it's got increases on both he and Connie.
I think at that last year's number, it was about 3,000 off. If you add his last year's, it comes out to 30,999, which then you do the 33,000. That's a $2,100 difference.
Well, and what the deal was is because when he hired Connie, there was a time lag in there. I remember we talked about that in budget that, he was running the whole thing, and so there was some savings in Lori's from what they were paying Lori. And so when he hired Connie, he hired her at a higher level. I mean, his job title and payment at that time was $11 an hour, and he hired her at $13.50 because he had money in the budget to do so. That's why there's going to be a discrepancy in what was, I think when it's all said and done, according to the calculations, he's going to be, that's a yearly projection, but it's not going to be what it actually is, because there was savings, there was about, about 4 or 6 weeks or so, something, he was quite a while, running the thing himself, so I mean, that's, but if you add the last column up, it comes up 32,079, within the budget, it shows 33,000. Like I said, I would want to ask you a couple of these things, because a couple of them are fairly a little higher. I mean, there's a new repairs and service line item, and then there's a new computer line item. 2012 estimate is even $13,000 higher than what was budgeted. So the increase doesn't look that high, but it is, when you look at what the request is compared to what was actually budgeted in 2012, there's a $27,000 increase. But here again, without making any modifications, I wanna talk to him about that. I don't think Jeff on the county council did that increase that we were gonna allow, it's not in there. Did you see that?
Yeah, so it does. So it's corrected.
Which one is this?
Salary on county council.
The first draft that I seen it didn't match with what the budget item had.
What do you get for salaries?
For county council?
Yeah,
26, which year?
this year.
This year, 25,254. 7,000 contractual services.
What do you adjust that to 35,250
The budget or the?
for the
salary?
budget for salary, 2013?
25, what?
35,250. I thought we had that corrected. I guess we didn't.
does that economic development then go to more than them? I mean, because they,
It goes to,
Kansas City raised up.
Kansas City Regional, Enterprise Facility, one was,
Like
two of them for 10,500.
well, what's built that second?
Rocan.
I just want to make sure, you know, because they came up and requested, and I just never did see the, I want to make sure that we have funded.
What's the question on the economic development?
Well, I guess I ain't got a question as to, because it shows that on this one sheet, that only by the current year estimate was only like $4,700 for 2012, and now we have 35,000 budgeted. No, right, must be looking too long. No, okay, yeah, now. Is it under general?
Should be.
Okay, so it will, alright, that's why, okay, that's why it doesn't appear on
I
here.
don't know, that just called me back.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna come under county general. Alright, now, that's starting.
Okay. Okay, okay, fine.
That makes it more difficult on the ledger, it doesn't show it under, grouped under one of the ledgers scattered out
Yeah.
throughout the ledger, that's making it more difficult to track. Yeah, it's like scattered all through, if you look at all of them,
Yeah.
like,
Oh.
tourism,
Yeah, it's,
that's why it's hard to.
there's no one, we don't appropriate a one economic development, it's. we
Because
appropriate a little bit
here's
here,
the
a little bit
contract,
there.
and then he says, okay, now, alright.
Interesting again.
So probably that Juneteenth inflation here, we've got probably all underneath there.
Looks so.
Okay. What's our court liability?
That's the liability insurance.
she's usually pretty expedient about returning emails, so I'm a little bit surprised I didn't have one
They
this
may have
morning.
a long, holiday weekend, but you get their call.
I think she indicated she could come up this week, but.
Mhm.
So are we set though also on, are you gonna create the, I'm not against creating the IT department, but are you still looking at adding 1.5 positions there?
Mhm.
I mean, I know that's what you got figured in there.
Right.
Mhm.
My question is still whether we, anybody have any idea how many computers we've got
Currently,
in the whole system? Cause my son-in-law is an IT for a hospital. Him and another guy take care of 1,000 computers. That's not, no, you probably, I'm gonna say we have 200 or something like that. That's not, my point is do we have enough computers to justify one of the positions?
well, it's not just maintaining our computers that the IT is gonna handle, it's also the installation of new programs that.
That's what these guys do too.
Mhm.
That's what my son-in-law does. They do anything computer, IT, 500 computers, 2 different locations, 2 different hospitals.
We're having to, their infrastructure problem, or their system already existed, whereas we're creating a new one.
So you're saying once we got created, though, we would need another position?
Well, depends on how much we want to convert into, IT, because if you go with some of the cutting edge counties where they have all the departments into one drive, all the information that we have is all integrated into the IT, all information technology. If we wanted to continue with that, that's a position that we'll have to continue to have.
Yeah, I'm not arguing the point that there's some justification in an IT person.
Right.
The question is the justification of how much and how do we compare to other counties? I mean, we're looking at actually gonna have, I mean, I don't know how you look at the GIS guy, but I mean, we're gonna have quite a few people in actually in technology.
What, 3.5? We have Tony, we have, Roger, and then we have Wes, who's literally at this point half IT guy, so that's two full people. And then an additional person, so we'll have 3, but in reality, we have 4 people, but only 2 part-timers. So, having a full-time GIS guy and then having a full-time IT.
You know,
with
I can see
supplemental-
probably, I'm beginning to understand GIS, and that's probably not that much of an issue at this point.
Right.
It's gonna be an ongoing, necessity. My question is, are we jumping into something and then it's gonna be hard to get out of it? I mean, justification of having that many people on staff. I'm saying, I get the technology's gonna cost us.
It'll cost us up front, but as we move into providing more services and integrating more departments, it's really tough to,
It's hard to quantify it.
it's really hard to quantify because
I've heard so, yeah.
it is a dollars and cents thing, but it's not an explicit dollars and cents thing. It's the things that we save on by making it more efficient and making things more, convenient. It has some, the benefits aren't going to be right there, like by hiring this guy, we're gonna save, $200,000 in this, because we haven't established what in 3 years, what our IT integration is gonna be. We still need to establish how far you're gonna go in, because we just wanna maintain our current levels, then we wouldn't want, yes, it'd be really hard to justify a whole nother IT person. But if we want to do what we said we wanted to do and then keep going in that direction. So it's not the answer, that's probably as quantifying how much money that's going to save us, it's difficult because we don't know yet. But it is out there, and if we have to pass some threshold as far as break even, I mean, it's very easily conceivable that he will save, you know, his salary's worth and then some. So.
Well, is that a legitimate salary for, I mean, how long do you keep a good IT person at that salary? I mean, it sounds like a lot of, you know, a decent amount of money to me, but I also know what my son-in-law makes, and I mean, of course, you know, it's, of course, he lives in Johnson County, so you have to get that factor in there, but I mean.
And it is one of the fastest growing labor industries in the country, so being competitively, being competitive.
Scares me a little bit whether we're gonna be very competitive. I mean, this could, you know, the sad thing is, I mean, if you start changing every 1 or 2 years, you can gain a lot, because, you know, there's that time frame in there that, you know, orientating people and stuff, so, but, I know a good IT person is worth a lot more than really, don't get me wrong. Because if you got people that aren't trained or don't know specific stuff, why, you know, by the time you get some outside source to come in and fix it, you know, it costs you money, so. But I think that probably gets us back to point number 2, not that we can dictate, but as employees come in and work in offices behind computers, hopefully that's gonna be a skill that they know, you know, pretty good knowledge of computers and stuff, and they help lighten the load of, you know, IT people too. They understand their computers.
Exactly, more computer literacy helps out everybody.
Good terminology, so. I can take several courses and probably still not catch up.
That has been required since I've been in school from like 5th grade on, so.
And more power to you, I mean, they're great, when they're used right, computers and technical, they're great.
Right, but if we don't know how to do basic transactions, all the technology in the world is going to be machines. So it is not just hiring one, but also catching it, making sure everybody has a basic understanding, because there's no point in having integrated departments if not everybody can
Yeah,
use the information.
Right, yeah.
Or
Run
find
different
it.
program, I mean, some of the software programs are not expensive, you know, so, you know, we can, you know, I can see that part of the stuff, so, you know, that's, all right, I take that back, sorry. You helped.
We know we're not gonna catch up to, we don't need to catch up to the Wyandotte, the Shawnee counties, the Johnson counties, just because they have it. For the sheer fact of economy of scale, we don't need to rival them, but we do have quite a bit of work to do as far as catching up to even pure-sized counties in Kansas, or you go to Washington, like Washington State, all the tech people, it's ridiculous.
Well, are we kind of clear on some of these changes, that you plug numbers in and stuff, and then, I trust these guys, I mean, we're gonna have, you know, we'll be revisiting this, there's no doubt. But, and they can communicate, if you want to send me, I know that computer actually, people want to be out, but there, I will have a laptop, so email, you can send me an email, and I can communicate back as to, you know, any questions or whatever. But I imagine probably, knowing that we've got a hearing tentatively scheduled for the 19th, we need to pass that temporary, maybe say tomorrow, or be here, but you guys can pass something tomorrow. If not, I mean, it has to be, you can't do it on Monday, because that'll give you 10 days. do you have to?
You have to actually press public hearing.
So the date, okay, so that,
So it's 10 days from the date that you set.
so that puts you clear to the 22nd.
So, if it's on the 12th, then you want to.
The 22nd is Saturday.
It has to be on the Wednesday.
We got the wrong dates. Should be 24th,
Oh,
26th.
that was the.
That's what's, okay.
I think we just added a week on that one, yeah.
On this, here, John is using that for, emergency response area. With my phone, and we got surplus from years ago.
It was just a matter of a transfer station.
What it is, but that's, he was, that we got decided we use it for. But we leave it like this, if you want to force it, better go back there. So, if they're doing this to John, at least see where it's at.
So we're saying now, four, is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't know what works for, you know, I don't know.
Have something in to make the, was it Saturday edition?
You know, I think the key thing here is just
When
make
we-
sure we got some of the
When's
numbers we
the
talked about.
deadline?
Yeah.
Before it's something.
Pass it, let the people see when you come back and you.
For public notice.
You know, we need to meet with those people.
I don't know for sure. By ethics, I'm not supposed to have anything to do with public notices,
Right,
and they change,
but like,
but I don't know
submit
what the
something
deadline
so
is.
that it's, it can get into
That would give us
circulation.
some-
Yeah, it's usually like noon,
That would give us time
noon
to
on
meet
our,
with,
when we're working on our publication,
Okay.
the way I
we can still
understand.
go ahead.
But that might have
Say like the
changed,
19th, or might, you know.
because
you know, we get those.
the best thing to do is to call, because,
Figures like what we
now we have Hiawatha, and,
really did, and that's what causes
the lady who usually does that, that's Hiawatha a lot, and she just had to train someone else to do it, they used to do it, and it's a refresher, and I'm not real sure what the deadline is.
So, visual does publish Wednesday and Saturday. Those are the two. So,
So today,
Well, and there's
we're
the,
working on Wednesday.
I know like
so we just, it
you
seems
know,
how,
some
you know,
counties
we
would
always
always
pass up.
have proposed,
If we were to do anything
legislation where, like,
hypothetically
you just
speaking,
put like.
we have to have it in
Papers of where you can find.
by
it,
today,
or-
so that the next day, it could possibly make circulation.
Larry,
Okay. So, conceivably, if we had a few breaks and we called an emergency meeting, if we got it
Mhm.
in by
And
Friday,
reviewing it was supposed to do.
it could make the Saturday.
I think we approved it.
But is that, but that's not the same as
We
a public
approved one, you
notice.
did it,
Oh, for another one?
I guess,
Okay, like legal notices or.
mhm, so there's the extra hoops that we have to jump through.
Yeah,
Okay.
but I think
Well,
that
you
deadline
know,
will be.
are you thinking that we approved the easement, the Muskota?
As far
This
as
one's two
special
hundred and fifty seconds.
meetings,
Okay, I don't know what we did.
yeah, I think there's supposed to be like
There was one of
24
those
hour
requests
notice.
for like multiple different things on it.
And I know
That was like.
some stuff it says that we're notified,
City of
and if we don't get it in the paper.
We approved that one.
We
But
did that
that's
one,
not,
this one you
not
talked to
30%,
Pat. He said he talked to Pat.
that's like a public notice. that
You don't need that,
you're wording it.
Yeah.
Because we,
But it's not like a legal.
you know,
if we could get something, say Thursday or Friday by noon,
Mhm.
get something done, we could get it into Saturday's edition. And that would mean that from the 8th, instead of, we have our 10 days easily, if we got it in on the 8th. Or got it into the paper on the 8th, and then
19th of,
that would work pretty good. Even if we were, yeah, if we don't do this Friday, we won't get it until the 12th, and then we're gonna have to push the date. We'll have to push it.
24th.
Yeah.
Is the 26th, because the 15th would be when it's published.
No, if we had it done Monday, then it would be published that Wednesday.
Oh, yeah.
this one.
So the 10 days would then push it to the 22nd, which is a Saturday,
Which would be the 24th.
which would go to the 24th.
Yeah. So I think you
I
got
think
two
that sounds
options.
good.
Yeah, I think you can shoot for that.
Shoot for Monday?
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't be here to officially vote, but you've got somewhat my input, and like I said, we know that